Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Women Who Rock Investigates, where branding just got even better for women. Our media source provides case studies in the areas of health, policy and government, human resources, and more. Our experts are handpicked with credible information to validate the latest in these studies. Join us each Tuesday at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time after Women Who Rock with Success. Now, let's go to the show.
And good morning and welcome to Women Who Rock Investigate. So we try to stay up on the latest breaking news and topics for our audience in order to bring them resources and tools from experts that can be able to shed credibility to our stories. And so on today we have a special edition, and we will be discussing the future of DACA and what it means for immigrants. We all know that former President Barack Obama passed the DACA bill in order to protect the immigrants who were born in the United States. So, however, our president is attempting to do away with the DACA program. So his first attempt failed by the Supreme Court, but he can still resubmit a new passing bid of eliminating DACA. So today, to be able to help us to understand a little bit more for our audience, we have attorney Joshua Despain, better known as JJ, in the studio with us today to help us to understand a little bit more. So good morning, JJ, and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Okay, great. So tell us a little bit about you and your profession.
Sure. So I have been a practicing immigration attorney for 4 years. I work with a firm called Wilner & O'Reilly. We are actually one of the largest firms in the country that does only immigration law. We have offices in California, Idaho, and Utah, and I manage our office in Boise. So I've been in Boise for about a year. And we do anything and everything to do with immigration. So that includes DACA. It also includes people who get green cards through family members or people who want to invest in the United States and can get a visa by investing here. It includes people who have to go to immigration court. So just anything that has to do with coming in and out of the United States, we handle that.
Okay, great. So explain to our listeners, because we have a variety of both immigration as well as Americans. So explain, if you will, to the Americans, what is DACA?
Yeah, good question. So back when Barack Obama was the president, immigration was pretty high priority for him as well as Congress. They wanted to try to reform the immigration laws because they're complicated, and even for me who handles this every day, there's always new things I'm learning and things that just seem unnecessarily complicated. So they tried to reform the laws with something called the DREAM Act, which would have, one of the things it would have done was provided a type of immigration status for people who came into the U.S. when they were kids and maybe didn't really have a lot of control over coming here. Their parents brought them or something like that. And to them, they're Americans. They maybe weren't born here, but in every other sense of the term, they're Americans. They went to school here, they want to work here and raise families here, and they might not even know the language from the country they came from. And so what this DREAM Act would have done is given them some legal immigration status. That act never actually ended up getting very far. So what President Obama decided to do is see what he could do within his own power. So to actually give them legal status, it needed to be Congress. But what President Obama did was provide a program where these same immigrants could get a work permit and then also be protected from deportation. So that's a little bit different from status, but it at least gives them a little bit of stability, and they can get a work permit, which also means they can get a Social Security number, which means they can benefit from other programs. They can go to school, start businesses, get jobs, start careers, and start families, and settle down more or less. So it was kind of a compromise between what could have happened and what actually ended up happening with Congress.
Wow, absolutely, very well stated. So, as I shared with some of the other attorneys that I have been interviewing. I think in 2019, I had an opportunity some years ago to be able to work with the federal law enforcement, and so I think it's puzzling everyone today, and it puzzled me back then as to the treatment of immigrants versus Americans. Even if they're deported or they're being deported, it was mainly like we section them off to themselves. We cram them all into several, and I know that their stuff that's their custom. Even when you live around them, some of them live that way, 10 or 15 to a home. But I'm saying in an institution where it's here in America, we supposed to treat all of them equal and right. And so even I had experienced that with the immigrants, where all of them was just in one huge cage, just all together. Of course, the African Americans were not booked in; they were not brought in that way or treated that way. And so, why do we see a large number, in your terms, as to why? I guess the U.S. treat them separate as if they're not citizens, whether they're through the DACA program or not. It's just irritating.
Yeah, it is, and we've seen this in the past couple of years with the new administration, where it's sort of like they're finding ways to chip away at the programs and the laws that we had before, little by little, to really reduce some opportunities. And a good example of that is asylum. We used to be able to have people come into our office, and maybe they had a pretty good asylum case, and we could talk about the pros and cons of applying for asylum, but now it's basically only used as a defense if someone is already in immigration court. Anyone who comes to the U.S., maybe they don't end up in the immigration court system because they came as a tourist or they came legally some other way, but now that they're here, they want to apply for asylum and not return to their home countries. That's a lot harder, and it's a very narrow type of case that even is worth trying for asylum these days. And so that's one example I've seen in just recent history where things that used to be available even just 3 or 4 years ago are just not anymore. And so we have seen just a different philosophy from the administration compared to years past, where they're making it just tighter and tighter to let people in, and finding ways here and there to reduce the number of people coming in.
Absolutely. So the next question is in regards to the Supreme Court, as we know, just rejected President Trump's bid to end legal protection of immigrants. And so, of course, we see on the news where individuals are afraid. They are still afraid because he has another opportunity of resurfacing it and bringing it back up again. And so why will the president receive another opportunity to end legal protection, and why is that important? As to because, of course, we want to take we would want, or we would love to see the fear taken away from the immigrants as to why, as to the reason why they don't have to fear of living in the U.S. or someone coming in, I guess taking their green card or taking the DACA program from them. So why is he given a second chance to be able to come back before his presidency ends? Opportunity.
Yeah. So what happened? So this program that was started by President Obama, that started in 2012. In 2017, when Donald Trump was president, they did decide to end the program, and he does have the constitutional authority to do that because basically it was created by one president, so it could be ended by any president later on. So, and when it comes to immigration generally, the president does have a lot of power, just in other types of programs. And so in 2017, that's when they decided to end the program. It ended up in court, and it got to the kind of, based on the different federal district courts, it got to a point where, okay, if you already have DACA, you are allowed to keep renewing your DACA work permits and keep that program going if you already have it. But if not, if you missed out before, you can't apply again. But while it was in court, that's what we were waiting on, to see what the Supreme Court would decide. And what came out last week was that the way that the Trump administration tried to end the program did not follow the correct rules and procedures. So there's something called the Administrative Law Act, which is not just about immigration, but any type of government program. They have rules about making changes to programs and making sure the American people know about it, and making sure they have some ways to kind of help people predict and plan ahead, and not just have sudden changes that throw everybody off. And basically the Supreme Court said that the way President Trump and the Secretaries of Homeland Security tried to end this program, the phrase they use is arbitrary and capricious, which basically means they ended the program, which they are allowed to do, but they did not give very good reasons, or at least not reasons that are good enough to actually end the program. And so what happened in 2017, the Supreme Court vacated. So basically DACA is back to where it was before that point. We don't know exactly what that means. I was actually just talking with some attorneys recently about we don't even have instructions on how to apply for DACA. We just are assuming it's the way it was before, but so far the agency that handles DACA applications is the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. They put out a statement saying they were disappointed in the Supreme Court decision, but that's it so far. So we aren't even exactly sure what the procedure is, but based on what the Supreme Court said, we know that DACA is back. But like you said, the Trump administration will probably just try again, and this time follow the rules of the Administrative Law Act, and just basically make sure they don't cut corners and try to give better reasons behind ending the program. But it does seem like they will attempt to do that again.
Wow. So we're going to use a scenario. So just just for argument, if the Supreme Court, which I don't think that they will, because I think that they're more concerned about as to how the families are separated from their children, and as to how it affects the children when they are, away from their parents or separated from their parents due to deportation. So we're going to use a scenario just in case, if it comes to his bid being passed, what would immigrants expect next after the bill has been passed? What would be the length of time would they have to prepare, or whether they have to be, I don't know the process of how that goes. I've never, I do remember when the former president was able to go in and induct that law, but what would immigrants or Americans, I would still say they're Americans, what would they expect for the next step if the law was passed?
Right. So you mean if DACA did officially go away?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it depends on a lot of their situations. They might have some other immigration options available to them. If anyone with DACA is married to a U.S. citizen, for example, there's a good chance that there's a way to help them stay in the United States, and maybe even get something more permanent than DACA anyway, like a green card or something like that. But for a lot of people, it could be kind of a scary time, because part of having DACA means that now the government has your name and address and knows how to contact you. And I still believe that as far as deportations go, they still are going to prioritize immigrants who have a criminal history or maybe just recently came into the U.S. So they might be lower priority, but it is a possible risk that if you had DACA and you don't have it anymore and there's nothing else you can rely on, you go back to trying to live under the radar and trying to avoid having to go to immigration court, or you might want to prevent that from happening and leave the U.S. on your own terms. That's something that people might want to do. So yeah, that is kind of a worst-case scenario that could happen if DACA were to go away. Before DACA was created, these people had to live under the radar and just try to manage without any type of work permit or immigration status, and they might have to go back to that. Only this time, the government knows where they might be able to find them. So that is kind of a scary thing for some of these people.
Oh wow, absolutely. That is certainly pins and needles type of living. So I guess this would be another question as to the ones from Honduras, the ones, when I worked in the federal system, half of the Spanish that I know today come from immigrants. They're not harmful people. They'll help you, even the Americans. They taught me what I know today, even with Spanish. So why is it that you think, in your terms, this is a hypothetical question, as to why the U.S. have not tried to work out some sort of program? We know that some of the locations in Mexico, Honduras, and other countries are perhaps maybe of a lower standard, perhaps maybe have a higher poverty rate than some areas in the United States. So why has not the United States tried to partner with the government there to see what they can be able to do to maintain their own, if that's the case? If they're having a problem with immigrants coming here, why is it that the United States should not be working with a program instead of just saying, okay, we're going to throw them out, or we're going to just deport them, or we're just going to get them out of here and things? It should be a more, some sort of strategy, comprehensive strategy to be able to work with them so they can be able to feel comfortable to live in their own territory, their own location and what have you, where they do not feel that they have to run from their own government. It seems like the United States should have created something to be able to impact that on a lucrative way.
Yeah, and even people who support the DACA program will admit that it is not a permanent solution and that it would be nice to have something more stable and more permanent. What's interesting to me is, I mean, as anyone can tell, any political issue these days, it's like just black or white. You're either for or against. There's no room for compromise. And we've definitely seen that with immigration, where people worry that if they look like they're supporting immigrants even a little bit, then that means they're totally pro-immigration. They want everyone to come in, and it's totally open borders. And then the opposite too, where if you are a little worried about immigrants, then you must be totally xenophobic. And I think there is actual room for compromise, and probably the prime demographic would be these DACA recipients, or sometimes they're nicknamed dreamers. I feel like this is a group where people from any part of the political spectrum should be able to agree, okay, these are people we do want in our country. They don't have criminal histories. They go to school and start careers, start businesses. They have families. And the only thing on their record, quote unquote, is that they came into the country without a visa, or they came in with a visa but let the visa expire. And they did that when they were kids and maybe didn't even realize what they were doing. And so it does seem like an area where people should be able to come together and come up with something. And even President Trump has said that in the past, that he would be supportive of something like that. Mostly he just passes it on to Congress, which, again, Congress would be the source for something more permanent. And so there's still hope that there could be something like that. But I think what the Supreme Court decision has done, and the whole Supreme Court case, is the Trump administration looks at it more like that they're trying to undo something that the previous administration did. And they take it a little bit more like kind of a competition between administrations, and unfortunately the dreamers are sort of caught in the middle. And so even if they maybe would be able to compromise, I think there is enough, just the political environment in Washington, D.C. makes it so that no one wants to even bring up the idea of compromise, because they feel like they already lose just by bringing up that idea.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Okay. So today, just earlier on Fox News, Chuck Schumer, who is also a commentator for that a news broadcast, and others, are, of course, are relieved. All of us are relieved of the Supreme Court rejecting this bid by the president. However, immigrants who are protected under the bill continue to live in fear. So are there any resources, and this is what I asked the other immigrant attorneys that have been on the broadcast too, because everybody has different resources that they can be able to share. And so, of course, I feel that when things are in the news, we still need to educate ourselves. We need to find the resources that we need, even if we have to hide, as far as the immigrants are concerned. So are there any resources that immigrants can be able to research out for, or if they're trying to get... I have seen individuals have their green cards and still be deported somehow. I'm not for sure how that got misconstrued with the law. Sometimes people will go around what they're supposed to be doing. So are there any information or tools and resources that you would like to share with the audience as to how they can be able to obtain, to keep themselves educated in the areas of DACA, and which we call dreamers, and then of if they're illegal, how they can be able to get their green card, I guess, without getting deported or what have you. They need the resources, and sometimes they feel, because that's what one of the women asked me. She said, "Well, do you care anything about us?" And of course, I went over there and I gave her a hug. When I worked in the federal system, I said, "Of course," because when they come to the U.S., they think it's against us, against them, and they feel that no one has any empathy for them. So this is an opportunity for them to hear any resources that you can be able to provide for them, where they can be able to stay educated as to the DACA program and any other programs that they have access to.
Yeah. So there are lots of different paths to get to permanent residency, which is the same thing as having a green card. And people come into my office. Well, nowadays, because of COVID-19, they're calling in to my office. But I have consultations every day with people who have immigration questions. So, if someone has DACA or either isn't available to get DACA or the DACA is about to expire, usually my first question is, does that person have any family members who are already U.S. citizens or permanent residents? Because depending on who that family member is, they might be able to do a petition for them. Pretty much every green card starts with a petition, and that petition is basically a way to get a place in line to wait for a green card. And that can be through a family member, and if it's a U.S. citizen spouse, that's sort of the highest priority. So if someone with DACA is married to a U.S. citizen, that's usually the easiest, smoothest path to get permanent residency. But another possibility is that sometimes has some overlap with DACA recipients is there is another type of status for people who are victims of crimes. So if someone was the victim of a violent crime in the United States, and if they cooperated with the police, then they can actually get some status. That was another program created by Congress a while ago as it's actually part of the Violence Against Women Act, but it doesn't just apply to women. But if someone is an immigrant and they were the victim of a serious crime, they are basically rewarded for reporting that crime and cooperating with the investigation because, as you can imagine, a lot of immigrants who are sort of living in the shadows, living under the radar, they might become the victim of a crime and they're worried about reporting to police because they're worried about themselves getting in trouble. And so this is the type of visa that is available. It's called a U visa is sort of the nickname for it. And it's a type of status available to somebody who kind of had that courage to report a crime even if they were worried about putting their own immigration status in jeopardy. And so that's another possibility where maybe someone is here, they don't have citizen or resident family members to help them through the process, but they can do their own process if they are the victim of a crime. So those are a couple of ideas, but there are lots of other possibilities out there, and that's sort of my job when someone talks to me for a consultation is take their life situation and translate it into the immigration law and what's available to them.
Great. So, what would you like to leave with the listeners, whether it's immigrants or whether it's before we get to the last question, what would you like to leave with them?
Yeah. So I usually look at things pretty optimistically, and even with something like this, with DACA maybe going away, we don't know how much longer it will last. I tend to try to be optimistic and look for what's possible, and even try things that don't have maybe there's no guarantee that it will work, but I've had enough experiences in my practice where I fight really hard for a client and advocate for them, and it pays off, and they're able to have some success. And so even in this day and age where, like I said at the beginning of this, where a lot of options are being restricted and narrowed down, there's still a lot we can do. And so anyone out there who is worried about their immigration status or worried that they'll have to leave the country or be separated from their families, they should talk to an immigration attorney, and if they talk to me, I'll try to tell them what's available, and I'm willing to fight for them and try whatever I can. And so basically I don't want people to lose hope. I think even with the way things are, and we watch the news, and it's scary, not just immigration, but for other things, but there's actually a lot that we can be hopeful for, and that's basically my job, is to just give someone the best chance they can, and that's what I'm here for.
Absolutely, absolutely. We've had such a wonderful time with you on today, sharing the information that the audience needs so very much, whether it's the Americans or the immigrants, because the Americans still can be able to convey the message over to a friend or over to a colleague or what have you. And so you have did a very descriptive job in doing that. So now this is all about you time. Let the listeners know how they can be able to connect with you, any upcoming training classes that you may have in regards to DACA or any immigration information, or any books that you have released in your websites or your social media handles. You can do that at this time.
Sure, yeah. Well, I haven't written any books yet, so I don't have anything there. But like I said before, I am in Boise, Idaho, but because of the way immigration law is, where it's all federal laws, I can actually help anybody anywhere in the country. So a lot of my work is done long distance. So anyone can get a consultation with me if they have their own case or have some questions about immigration. They can reach me, and we can either schedule a free consultation, or I can just answer an email or whatever might be more convenient. So the best way to contact me would probably be to go to my law firm's website, which is WilnerO'Reilly.com. That's WilnerOreilly.com. Or you can just Google Wilner and O'Reilly and find us that way. And then through that website, you can send a message and ask for a consultation. I'm also on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and all three of them, my handle is JJD Immigration. And so that's where I try to share immigration news or just share stories and photos of what I'm up to or what my office is up to. We like to go to different local events. Before the coronavirus hit, we were at a Quinceañera Expo here in Idaho, where it was a lot of like party planners and people who like to help out with quinceañeras and weddings. But then we had a booth there too, because we knew that there would be a lot of Spanish-speaking people who might have some immigration questions. And so local events like that are good to find us when those local events are happening again. But yeah, so there's a lot of ways to find us, and we're happy to talk about immigration with anybody.
Great. So, listeners, we have received a lot of information in regards to DACA, and as to the bid was not able to pass, even though it can recur. We have heard from the expert today to let you know, just don't worry, okay? And he's also given resources where you can be able to contact him, and he's also given resources where you can be able to research other additional information as to immigrants and to your situation and case. So for all upcoming events, you can go to our website at www.womenwhorockWithSuccess.com. And again, JJ, thank you for being our guest, and hope to have you back on real soon again.
Yeah, that would be great. Happy to be here, and just as you can tell, I could talk about immigration all day, so I'm glad to have this opportunity.
Okay, perfect. Okay, have a great day. Good afternoon.
Thank you. You too.